All right, good afternoon. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the African American Marketing Association's A New Wave of PR. Certainly appreciate you setting aside time to join us this afternoon. I'm excited to serve as your moderator today and look forward to introducing you to our incredible panel. My name is Jasher Cox. I currently serve as the Director of Regional Development at the University of Notre Dame. The public relations landscape is rapidly shifting towards independence, with 21,000 media first roles being eliminated in 2023 alone. As PR continues to be a fundamental pillar for nearly every brand, the industry has undergone significant change, and I think we can all agree there. Today, we'll hear from our expert panelists as they share their insights on these shifts and the strategies they've used in recent years to build their own brands. So now, let's meet today's panel, and we'll start with Shalia Reed. Nearly 20 years of experience. Shalia excels in public affairs, strategic communications, issues management, and partnership development. Her career in the pre-K 20 and ed adjacent sectors is marked by her ability to cultivate strategy partnerships, execute impactful advocacy campaigns, and implement comprehensive communication strategies. She recently joined PBK Architects as director, pre-K 12 or pre-12 engagement and partnerships. Welcome along, Ms. Reed.
Thank you, Jasher.
Bridget Holden is the principal owner of Houston-based public relations firm She Bridges PR, whose slogan matches its purpose of bridging the gap between you and the media. Bridget has evolved with her company by strategically branding her clients in the industries of fashion, beauty, entertainment, sports, nonprofits, and politics. Welcome along, Ms. Holden.
Hi, Jasher. Thank you. And it's pronounced Bridget.
Thank you. I appreciate that clarity. Sheba Roy, a native of Houston with nearly a decade of experience in media, branding, and podcasting. She received her bachelor's of science in business management in 2011 from the University of Phoenix. She began to work towards her master's in marketing, but chose to start a career in supply chain and logistics instead of completing a degree at the time. Welcome along, Ms. Roy.
Hello, thank you. And yes, I'll get into that later. But yeah, we didn't stop in 2011. As you can see, it's 2025 here. So thank you for having me.
You bet. Absolutely. And I'm hoping I pronounced this correctly. Jen Iro.
Genero.
Thank you. I was off. A seasoned publicist with expertise in entrepreneurship, beauty, thought leadership, and tech public relations for entrepreneurs and creatives, holding dual master's degrees in business and communications earned in 2018. She has honed her entrepreneurial acumen. So welcome along to all of our guests, and thank you for setting aside the time to join us. We're going to get right into it, and we will start with questions. And just so you know, give you an idea as to how this will flow this afternoon. We'll run the panelists through a long gamut of questions. There are about 6 of them. And once they're done answering said questions, we will open up the floor to each of you to start the process of asking questions as well. So the first question is for Ms. Reed, and we will go in the order of introduction, if that's okay. Ms. Reed, I'll start with you in asking question number 1, and that is, how do you build strong relationships with journalists?
You know, I think that relationships is really the measurement of many people's success. So indeed, the way a relationship goes is the way your partnership goes. It's the way your sales will go. It's the way everything goes. And so I think the way you build strong relationships, it's starting by asking what their goals are and understanding how what you do, what you have to offer, what you have to present meets their goals. I also think authenticity goes a long way. So all of us have a personality. Many of us have one that's a work one, a home one, but in this capacity, we are presenting ourselves as an expert and someone who is a connector to our clients or to our companies. And just showing up to a reporter, understanding that their jobs are not easy, and helping them to understand how you can make their jobs easier, I think goes a long way. Again, you continue to build that relationship. You would never buy a plant and not water it. It's the same way I feel about a relationship with a journalist. You constantly water the plant, you constantly engage. So when you do have a story, you're able to offer it to them and they'll pick it up. It sounds simple, it's not, but I think relationships are built on, I'll say, watering.
Yeah. And, there's also an honesty moment in there too. I think sometimes we tend to avoid media when the story may not be popular, and to stay consistent. And unfortunately, they have a job to do, and we've got to allow them to report on our different entities, even when the news is not necessarily popular, if that makes sense. But great answers there. Ms. Holding, same question. How do you build strong relationships with journalists?
So through the years, I have been a member of the Houston Association of Black Journalists, also a member of the National Association of Black Journalists. And for me, it's all organic. So getting to know someone, for me, and journalists, well, yeah, media people need us just as much as we need them. So that's an understanding. But to build that relationship with them, like getting to know them, their birthdays, their kids' birthdays, anniversaries, and things of that nature, that's very important to me. And so getting to know them as a person outside of what they do as a journalist, that's how I build my relationships. And that's across the board with people in general. But like Ms. Reed said, also watering the relationship, cultivating it, you have to make sure that you're intentional about it instead of just always calling them when you have a great story. And what that does is, because I cultivate those relationships, they'll call me. And that's what you want. You want to be on that side where producers or, reporters or journalists are calling you and saying, hey, I have this great story. Do you have a client that can fit this story? So that's how I build relationships.
Well done. I really like that answer. We will follow up with that same question now with Ms. Roy.
All right. Well, hopefully I don't hit the redundancy point. But yes, I agree with both Sheila and Bridget in the watering aspect. And also, I like to kind of make friends with the journalists because, I'm also a writer and I just love networking. So I look at it like we're just building another type of network. So when I have events that don't really pertain to them or don't necessarily need a news story, I invite them like they're friends. Hey, we're doing this. Do you want to come out? Because a lot of people don't use them that way. They just send them stories. So when you give them something that makes them feel like they're really human, they're like, you know what? I like this person. So just like Bridget says, then they're reaching out to you and saying, hey, we have a spot here. Do you have somebody? And that's what you want, because that's really what we're looking for with earned media anyway. So that's kind of my answer.
Yeah. No, I really like that response. There was a time when I worked in a couple of league offices, and there's certain pieces of news that will come out annually. And if I knew what those results looked like and we had a scheduled date, sometimes I would pre-release it or a soft release to the media, maybe one day ahead of the official release, just to give them a chance to generate their story earlier and maybe put another item behind them. And that also helped with building trust. So yeah, I definitely like that response, and it helps with cultivating the relationship. Last one on the panel to answer the question. We'll leave it with Jen.
Perfect. With me, I think honestly, understanding the media cycle and understanding the media and their beats and what they're looking for. For me, it's very important to be intentional and to add value. So I understand that it's a give and take relationship, and journalists need us as much as we need them. But me, I really truly like to. I truly believe in adding value, in being intentional, and that is understanding who the journalist is, right? Understanding what they like to write about, understanding what their focus is, and humanizing them, and not just using them for, what I'm trying to achieve, but being intentional and adding value, and really understanding the media cycle and the individuals within that media cycle on an intentional level. And so That's how I typically like to build strong relationships. And honestly, it's worked in my favor, and I'm so grateful. A lot of the people who I have in my backyard I can honestly call friends. You know, they're my friends first because I see them beyond what I need them for, and really humanizing them and making it not all about the work. So being intentional, adding value where you see fit, and understanding the media cycle and understanding media outlets as a whole. That's be how I build strong relationships with my colleagues.
Being intentional and adding value. I think those are profound strategies there. We'll move along to question number 2, back to the top of the order with Ms. Reed. What strategies promote diverse representation in terms of your clients reaching new audiences?
I wish I was a person that could answer this question straight. So first, I'll have to clarify and tell you that I think we have misused the word diverse, and we tend to think. I'm going to say me. I'm an African American female. Diverse for me means there's more than me, right? There's a Hispanic male. It could be an age difference. It doesn't have to necessarily mean, something different. Diverse is like a bag of Skittles, right? They're not all the same. I think many times when people use the word diverse, especially in a corporate setting or in a more predominantly white space, they actually mean people of color being included. And what I think you have to help our colleagues, I love how you refer to members of the media as your colleague, right? As the way we have to help them to understand is there are other stories that can be told. We have to look at the news cycle and understand how the news cycle is impacting everyone in a different way. And then you promote the story or you tell the version of, or give someone's side, make them the subject matter expert for those type of things. I'll give you an example. The weather in Texas is going to change in the next couple days. I know, Joshua, you're way up north. You have a scarf around your neck, right?
Inside, yes.
My son went to school in shorts. Okay, it's supposed to snow on Tuesday. On Tuesday, snow. Okay, so what are the ways we can help people tell that story? Well, for women of a certain age, when it gets cold, our joints ache. So can we talk about their story, right? Instead of it just being about the typical, homeless or, how we're going to get, kids at the bus stop. I think we have to look at different ways to tell the story of the people that are living the real lives, the unfortunate fires that are happening on the West Coast. How can we find ways to tell the stories about the lived experiences of people? Because the world that we live in is not one way. So how do we tell the story of the African American male in that situation? How do we tell the story of the Hispanic female grandmother? Right. And I think we have to make sure that we understand diverse does not only mean age, but instead it's way of thinking, experience, age, sex, race, gender, their beliefs, and look at ways to promote it that way. When you make the story touch the audience, you're gonna get a response because the media can't deny that. When you connect the dots, people will follow that line. So if I worked in schools, our snow day would be about how are parents preparing for the bus stop, right? Now we're talking about the mom that's a single mom. We're talking about daycares. We're talking about schools. We're broadening the story. So I think you broaden the story, but connect it to the everyday people and their lived experience.
Absolutely. I love the diverse piece. The best way it was explained to me is as if you're building a choir. Everyone can't sing soprano, alto, tenor, bass. You need all of those voices, and then you have to build the musicians behind the choir.
Okay, very good.
Everyone can't play the same instrument. So it's the best way to try to describe diversity at its core. I really like your answer, Ms. Reed.
I like that.
Moving on to Ms. Holden. Same question now. What strategies promote diverse representation?
Well, for me and in my firm, what I do is that I look at what's going on in the news. Like you said, Ms. Reed, with the fires that are going on. In case in point, I had a client for Thanksgiving that they did a food drive and they fed over 3,000 people. Well, out of those 3,000 people, one of the gentlemen who came to get food was a father, and he has, I think, 5 kids. His stove went out, no stove. So he couldn't even feed his family on Thanksgiving Day. So they provided enough food for them for Thanksgiving Day and a few days after. Well, of course, the story got out there. But that was another part of the story. We're talking about the food drive itself. So last weekend, that same client, which is a church, provided a brand new stove for his family and him so he could, cook on the stove. And this is a Hispanic gentleman. And they came out. Well, I contacted the media and said, hey, this would be a great follow-up story because they interviewed him with that piece. And so there it was as a follow-up story. Now, although my clients are African American, this, particular story, they're Hispanic. I don't represent him, but the story was an all-around story, if that makes sense. So I always look at what's going on in the media, and then I have my client and see how they can fit in there, because it may be something that some of our counterparts are doing, who are not African American. They could be Asian or whatever ethnicity or man or woman. And then I try to bring in that piece where my client's professionalism or expertise is in that area and say, hey, did you look at this from this perspective? So it's about looking at perspectives and seeing how my clients can fit into those particular diverse situations, or those situations to make it, diverse representation, if you will. Does that make sense?
That makes all the sense in the world. I love that answer. Absolutely. Thank you.
Sure.
Moving right along to Ms. Roy now. Same question. What strategies promote diverse representation?
All right. So to me and to us here, the strategy is really reality. So I have multiple clients who are like, okay, well, we want to reach a more Hispanic audience, or we want more white people. Because when we talk about diversity for Black organizations, sometimes we're talking about including our Caucasian counterparts. Well, it really begins with, do you have any of those people in your organization? Are they here even? So can we really speak to an audience that looks like people that you don't even have any connection with? So like begin with including some of those people in your organization, on your board, in your staff, whatever you need to do, and then show the audience that those people live right there with you. So I'm big on photography and videography when we're talking about, telling the story. So create some content that uses those people, speaks to them in their language, like really make them comfortable. Otherwise, they're not coming. So that's my answer.
Very well. Love it. Absolutely. Great response. Jen, we'll end this same question with you. What strategies promote diverse representation?
Okay. I think when it comes specifically pertaining to TV news, it really starts within the newsroom. We got to have diverse individuals within the newsroom that understand the community that you're in, right? There has to be some type of representation of us, people of color, that when it comes to stories and it comes to segments that they can identify and they can understand. That's the first thing for me. And then also impact. Whenever I'm telling stories or pitching stories, whenever I'm representing clients, right, I really ask them, what is the impact? And I find that impact, if they don't know what the impact that they're creating, because impact is really what's going to move the needle when it comes to news or storytelling as a whole, right? What impact are you creating? What about you can I take to make bigger? I can amplify. I can create an angle that is familiar with people, that has a really human interest aspect to it, that this community can resonate or rely with, right? Because it's my job as a publicist to get the representation for my clients, right? And if WFFA isn't representing anybody on the spectrum that looks like my client, then I have to infiltrate that and figure out what their news cycle is, what they primarily cover, and come to my clients and say, this is what this outlet is focusing on, and this is the impact you're creating. So let's do it this way, or let's pitch it this way, so it can be relatable, right, within the community that you're in. So I think having an impact angle definitely does help with diverse representation and really understanding the newsroom. Who is in that newsroom? What person can I identify that understands this person's struggle, or understands this person's situation, or understands this person's community, that can help get that representation told to a bigger audience, bigger story. So impact and understanding the newsroom.
Very well. Thank you, Jen, for that response. Love it. Third question, back to the top of the order now with Ms. Reed. Has social media changed PR strategies? Ms. Reed.
The answer is simple. Yes, you can probably get to people faster because you have more accessibility to get to them, but I don't think it changes the nuts and bolts of the work. You still have to have a quality story. You still have to be able to pitch an idea and understand how to reach the person. I think what social media has done is uncovered a new opportunities and new ways of reaching. It just has diversified our opportunities. But the fundamentals remain. You know, you still got to be able to write. You still have to be able to speak about it. You still have to be able to talk about impact and how you can connect the dots.
Yeah. A great answer to that question. And the first thing that caught my attention is you said you can get to information faster, but it may not always be accurate. For the audience that's on, how do you decipher what's accurate these days?
I mean, I guess you're asking the audience, but I'll answer the question and tell you, I mean, it's accurate until it's not. I mean, we don't know what's reality and what's true and what's not. So
yeah.
So in some ways, again, you can get to information, but the fundamentals remain. You still have to research and determine if it's accurate, if it's timely, if it's appropriate. Yeah. But it's there.
I got us off for a minute. Anybody else care to respond to that question?
Well, I mean, like our fake news, you want to make sure that that's not happening. Yeah. But I would agree with Ms. Reed. You have to make sure that it's accurate, and of course, absolutely, what you're putting out for your clients, to make sure that what you're putting out is factual, and the bases are there. Make it easier for the journalists to make sure that information that you're giving them is accurate as well, and that means also fact checking your own clients. So yeah.
Ms. Holden, we'll keep it right there. Has social media changed PR strategies?
Absolutely. I feel like it's opened up more opportunity for us, if you will. And like, piggybacking on what Ms. Reed said, we can find people more, but we can also, I love the fact that if it's a great story, we can just tag the media outlets right away, or the journalist, and it's easy to find people instead of doing the grueling search back in the day where you had to look it up and fax people. I'm telling my age, but but now it's a lot easier where you can just kind of at them, or if they have their information there, and you can find their email addresses and email them. Then you can send DMs, direct messages, and say, hey, please check your email. I just sent you this great story, and also let them know, hey, I follow you. I've seen that you covered this. Well, I have a client that's doing this. I think it would be a great follow-up, to what you're doing. Or I see you talk about this, or I saw you report on this the last time. Well, here's something that, here's a news story that I have for you. So yeah, I think it's opened up for us in the PR industry. It's given us more advantages. That's my opinion.
Outstanding. Thank you. And I appreciate the answer to that question. Ms. Roy, we will pass it along to you as well. How has social media changed PR strategies?
Okay, well, I hope my internet connection didn't start acting up. I started to feel like you guys sounded like the
robot
Transformers for a second. Okay, so yes, so I was like, wait a minute. So honestly, you guys, when I started doing this, I mean, it was probably right at the height of everybody was really excited about social. So I don't know if I can speak necessarily to major shifts from like Bridget, who is remarkably beautiful for whatever age, like sending faxes. Like that's not my experience. A lot of my first relationships with journalists came from Twitter. And actually my first really major placement was because I had harassed this man on Twitter in his DMs. So I think for me, when it comes to like even using Instagram now, just like Bridget said last week, there was a story that came out and somebody tagged and said, hey, this is happening. We're looking for coverage. So I just tagged a few people. Somebody was like, hey, I want to talk about it. Send me an email. So just like she said, it kind of works that way. But I also find that the best responses to my pitches come after I've sent them also a supporting piece of social media content. So I find that if they really, I don't want to say, I mean, these people do not have the time they used to have. I think that's the biggest thing that's changed. But if you send them, you know, something that's already kind of prepared, a lot of time they use my social media content on air. So I think it's really been a benefit to what we do.
I would agree.
Yep. Great answer. Thank you. Same thing, Jen. Has social media changed PR strategies?
Yeah, I think social media is a faster avenue for news. I do think there's a downside to that things aren't always fact checks. Meta's removing their fact checking, right? So information isn't always accurate. Do I feel like it's the best source? Not necessarily, but I do feel like it's another avenue for people to rely on, right, when it comes to PR, public relations strategies. I also feel like within the PR spectrum that, you know, we now have to add elements of social media within our strategies because social media is taking over, the internet is taking over. And so it's always important to know when to pivot and how to pivot. And so it's definitely, social media has definitely helped with getting the message out faster, quicker. And oftentimes that there's a downside because it's not obvious. It's not always accurate, or it cannot always be accurate, right? When it comes to news and it comes to relaying what's happening. But I think there's been an evident change. There's been an evident and obvious change. But I do also want to say that, like, social media is not PR, and people do believe that. I guess the narrative now is that PR, social media is PR. It's not. They're different. It's a tool. It's a resource.
Mm-hmm.
But we really have to know the difference between what public relations is and what social media is. And so that was my response.
I would agree.
Very good. Big difference. Glaring difference, too.
Huge.
Moving right along to question number 4, and that's talking about how media relations has evolved. Let's talk about that, Ms. Reed.
I mean, in some ways, I think we've kind of answered this question and agreed that what Bridget said. I remember faxing. I remember, you know, hand delivering printed out press releases, and you used the good paper to do it, right? I remember that. I remember when you made media kits, and now I'm like, you just send somebody a link and say, it's all here. So what has changed, I think, is the ability to get information fast, quick, and to them. In some ways, I think the relation part has been omitted. And it's give it to me, give it to me, give it to me. It's kind of like past the microwave into the like, I need immediate consumption, short and to the point. But, you know, I'll go back to my very first answer, though. At the end of the day, relationships matter. And so all of those folks may need something immediately right now, but there will be a time when it slows down, and unfortunately the news cycle will be slow. There will be no time. They will be looking for stories, or there will be an emergency and they need information and they can't get to someone, and those relationships will matter. So I think it has evolved because the same tools that we used before may have evolved, but it's still, again, fundamentally it's the same. It does not change. You still fundamentally have to do the same things.
Yeah, no, I agree. And just in my small world, of the overwhelming majority of my career in media relations has been in athletics, and just my small world, it's changed so fast. You know, I work for a university that's playing for the national championship on Monday, and at the conclusion of it, there's a recap that will be written. And, you know, 10, 15 years ago, people wanted a 4-page recap of what happened in the game. And now folks just want 2 to 3 minutes of highlights and a couple of blurbs of what took place. And that's just where we are. No one is reading that long page recap anymore in the newspaper. So yeah, you're exactly right. Same question, Ms. Holden, media relations and how it's evolved in recent years.
So I'm going to go in a different route with this question. So media relations has evolved most definitely because now, like you said, to your point, Jasher, that people want quick. So where social media comes in is that you can do a reel, 60 seconds, bam, here's a highlight. Like you called it a highlight reel for sports. So now basically it's a highlight reel, but also podcasts have now evolved. And now, you can get information from podcasts, which has become another arm for media relations, to get your client on, different podcasts. So I think that's something that has evolved because I don't think anyone saw that. I think it started out with was it Periscope, or am I saying that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. See, I'm aging myself. That was out. And then what's the other one, guys, where people come up on the platform? Is that still around?
There was a Clubhouse at one point,
Clubhouse. There was,
right?
Clubhouse, yeah, and then there's Periscope, and
Yeah.
so those things I think evolved into having podcasts.
Yep.
And so, podcasts are popping up all over the place, which is fine because there are some really good ones. But now people who are not journalists per se, who didn't go to school for journalism, I went for broadcast journalism, and that doesn't matter. Well, in some cases, because some podcasts are not, well put together, but I'm just saying it's also given people a platform to talk about things. So podcasts, I can have you on as a guest, or I can have you on as a guest. We can talk about relationships, we can talk about the economy, we can talk about anything. So to me, media relations has evolved in a sense that there's been another outlet added to share news, and that's podcasts as well as reels on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, because now, like you said, everyone wants it now, microwave. And so, bam, here's this 30-second reel, or here's this 60-second reel. So pay attention. This is what I did. And now I'm on to the next. And we all sit there and do that, scroll.
Yeah. That's correct.
So that's how I wanted to approach that question.
Yeah. No, thank you very much, Ms. Holden, for that answer. Ms. Roy, same thing, media relations and how it's evolved in recent years.
Okay, so in recent years, I have noticed that the style and the type of pitch, like I had mentioned kind of previously, that got picked up changed. And I read this, I guess it was like the state of PR a while back, but it really touched on the fact that, and like I kind of mentioned previously, that these newsrooms and these media outlets just do not have the capacity that they once had. So if you basically prepare the story for them, and I heard this from somebody who works at one of our local TV stations too, she mentioned this. If you basically prepare the story for them and you send them the pitch, and they can say, okay, yes, now I can take this and I can add 2 lines. I love it, so I think that's one thing. But then also influencers are now seen as the media in so many different cases, which they are, because, media outlets are different. And I'll have clients who really prefer to bring influencers to an event or an engagement or to talk to them than they would to go on television or to get into a magazine. And I guess it's because of the instant reach. So if you have an influencer who has a reel that has 120,000 views on it, right then, okay, cool, my money went somewhere or my effort went somewhere, but you can't, necessarily see everybody who's watching you on TV. So I think they kind of don't really realize that there still is an impact with the old school style. So that's my answer.
No, I think you're right. Great point. One thing too, not to get ahead of Jen, I think data allows PR teams to understand audience preferences and monitor media coverage and adjust those tactics accordingly as well. Jen, same thing for you. How has media relations evolved in recent years?
Oh, it's completely evolved. It's completely changed the course. Let's go back to social media. People can get their news within an instant, right? Look at TikTok. I'm guilty. I consume news off of TikTok. I go to an influencer to get a reliable review versus a news source, right? And newsrooms are drastically getting smaller, right? So budgets are getting cut and things are just changing. You have to kind of keep up and evolve with the times, right? You have to adjust and change your strategies. People aren't really going to be reading newspapers anymore. People aren't really going to be navigating to the actual news to kind of watch what's happening. Social media can do that. Social media can definitely give you your news and like. So I'm so sorry. I didn't get the name of the individual with the green background. I apologize. Like she said, influencers.
Sheba.
Say it again. Sheba. Perfect. Sheba. I apologize. Influencers are really like becoming the cream of the crop these days, right? They're pushing this narrative and they're becoming the reliable source these days, and it's kind of scary, but I mean, that's what evolution is. That's what evolving looks like. You kind of have to keep up with the times, and a lot of news sources are evolving too. They're understanding that video content is where they have to put out these highlight reels to keep people's engagement, to keep them engaged. And so, media relations is an ever changing, ever evolving phenomenon, honestly, because it's in the next 5 to 10 years we're going to see something different, right?
Yeah.
But that would be my response to that question.
Thank you very much. Question number 5 now, top of the order. How do you attribute business outcomes to PR efforts, Ms. Reed?
So I actually have exited what is a traditional comms job. I've been the chief of comms at a couple different organizations. I've served in a different capacity and have left that space and now work under a title that doesn't have communications in it at all, right? In fact, there's another whole department that's called marketing and comms, and I'm not a part of that. And what I take away from that is the role that I play in doing in the things that we've all talked about: media relations, developing relationships, understanding impact. All of those things are something that are innate in me, and really my job now is to use that to turn those into sales, right? To turn those into dollars. And so when before, I think in my other roles, some of that was used to turn it into goodwill or to turn it into, engagement or connection and retention. It is truly now, how are those same tools and efforts that I was doing with a comms title used directly to impact the bottom line? And many people in this organization that I'm in don't know what PR is. They have an idea. They think, oh, that's PR. Or somebody said today, oh, that's marketing. Actually, it's none of those things. But, I understand what you're saying. And so I think that the business outcomes are really designed. I think I'm just getting closer to what the real outcome is. In many of your roles, you've talked about how your job is PR, so it is driving your everyday business, and it's going to help that. If your client is a restaurant, if your client is a photographer or something that's sales driven, well, they want to connect the dots to how do eyes and viewers turn into dollars and cents. I've just removed that layer, and what I do every day, while it may not have a title of PR, is indeed driving the business outcomes. And so I think that what we have to realize is, if the world we're in now is a world that's competing for attention. Um, Still dating myself, at some point it was 8 mentions or 8 times you see something. I remember learning that's when it turns into, a connection. The truth is, it's probably more like 100. Because you can be driving down the street and that billboard has been there for 10 years and you've never seen it, right? And then you one day log on to TikTok and now boom. And so I think that we don't realize that those PR efforts are really driving business outcomes, but the things that we are doing can be under the umbrella of PR.
Well done. Thank you, Ms. Reed. Same question, Ms. Holden.
Well, I agree with Ms. Reed on all those points as well. And then I would just like to add, so putting the effort out there, our efforts helps the business or our clients be seen, helps drive ticket sales if they're having an event, helps attract sponsorship or partnerships as well. Because it just depends on the client. For example, I have a client that's having an event in Atlanta. And so we're doing product sponsorship, getting people who want to speak. And and it's, around breast cancer. And so those are things that for that business of breast cancer, because although it's a nonprofit organization, it's still a business. All of that matters from the PR efforts that, we've solidified to get them out there into the public. Also to get, like I said, product sponsors, partnerships, interviews with, different media outlets, podcasts, radio, in magazines. And so that's how I feel like our PR efforts, like you said, Ms. Reed, because I've been guilty of that, passed by a billboard and then one day it's there and I'm like, oh, how long has that been there? It's been there forever. But when you're not paying attention, you're not paying attention, and then you'll see it somewhere. Just like Houston opens up a new restaurant, seems like every other day, and it's there, but we don't see it or notice it until it's on TikTok or on Instagram, because now you have those influencers who go around and talk about restaurants. So all PR, I feel like, has an underlying, effort for business outcomes, because everybody needs PR. You want other people talking about your business, your product, or your service. And so that's my answer.
Yeah. Great. Thank you. Ms. Roy, how do you attribute business outcomes to PR efforts?
So again, I agree with both Ms. Reed and Bridget Holden. But I'll say this, okay, I'll just use myself for an example. So we have a farmer's market here at the Acres Home Chamber, right? The goal is to bring people to this farmer's market. So a couple of weeks ago, we go on a local radio station, and that morning that the show airs, a lot of people are hitting me saying, hey, I want to come. Well, obviously, that was an increase in interest, which was what we were looking for. So, sometimes the proof is really just that simple. But other times it might be like, if you have a client who comes to you and says, I really need to increase participation, sponsorships, what have you, you may have to take 6 to 7 months to build their credibility, the visibility, and to just really push them out there using owned media before you do see any outcome, which then the next year you may see $10, $15, $20,000 in sponsorships from that effort. So, I mean, it's a long game, and it's really just paying attention to what happens on a day-to-day.
Thank you, Ms. Roy. Jen.
I definitely piggyback off of what Shiva said, paying attention to what happens, but also understanding KPIs, what they want to achieve, right? Understanding the KPIs, what they want to. I always, because I don't ever go into anything trying to set myself up for failure. I try to understand the client and what they want to see from whatever campaign we create, right? In seeing, measuring the metrics of what we've achieved, whether it's how many outlets we've got them on, what the impressions and the reach of that outlet, and seeing, matching it, right, based off our pre-conversation, and understand and seeing if we're actually meeting their outcome, meeting the goal. So it's really, honestly, understanding the KPIs within each client and what they're trying to achieve to see if we are actually meeting their outcomes, their goals per se, right? So that would be my answer.
Love it. Thank you very much for that response. Our sixth and final question. We had 6 of them. That went by fast. Ms. Reed, back to the top. What emerging trends will reshape PR in 2025?
Well, I think I need to get the elephant out of the room. I think there's a lot of people waiting to see what's going to happen with TikTok. And so I think that's going to be a game changer. I also think how our political climate impacts First Amendment rights and where and how you can share. I think the other conversation we just need to remember is our next president is not a fan of the general news cycle, right? I think he likes to control that, which only means that news outlets will point to that, right? So they will shift the way they do work to meet the needs. And so I think that we just all have to be conscious of that. I also think that we're entering in a space in which stories about what you do and how you do it will be immediate. My news cycle yesterday was completely filled with how forever First Lady decided not to attend inauguration. I mean, that killed my news cycle yesterday. That was all day. Yeah. Today is not the discussion anymore. We have moved on to something else. So I only think it's going to get faster, but I think we'll continue to have to monitor the things that we're doing now. In the same breath, I hope to believe that I do think long form stories are going to come back in a different way. And then I don't think we can't ignore AI. It is driving the way we do things. At one point, I think we were all afraid of what was gonna be said.
Yeah.
Now, I don't. I think we're wondering what pictures are true, what videos are true, whose voice is accurate, and so I think all of those things will continue to impact what we're taking in, and then how that impacts our role as PR professionals. How are we competing with that, and how are we using those same tools to make our job easier?
Very well. Absolutely. Ms. Holding, what emerging trends will reshape PR in 2025?
Well, I agree with Ms. Reed. For one, we all are kind of waiting to see what this new president is going to do, because he doesn't like she said, the news, because he's always talking about fake news, if you will. And then if one major social media trend, which is TikTok, goes away, then what's going to replace that? I also tend to agree with Ms. Reed. I think that long form storytelling will come back, which will be great, because it will not be that microwave thing. You know, as you know, in life, the more things change, the more they stay the same, and we have a tendency to just kind of go back around to what we started out with. I do believe that whatever takes the place of, or a new social media type thing will come up, because Snapchat is trying to come up and stand out against other. I know that they say this for a younger audience. However, I've seen other trying to say this in a politically correct way, other generations, if you will, are starting to get on Snapchat as well, because that seems to be the new wave now. That's what I've noticed since I've been doing PR in 2024. It was kind of going on an upswing, because there are more brands who are hiring, if you will, influencers. And so Snapchat, they had to do something. And so now they're kind of coming up. So I believe that long form as well as Snapchat will kind of come out and be the emerging trends in 2025.
Understood. Love it. Thank you. Ms. Roy, what emerging trends will reshape PR in 2025?
I feel like maybe it was Shelia that said authenticity, or maybe it was Bridget earlier that mentioned authenticity. But I think that is going to be the number one trend, because I feel like people are really tired of looking at what feels like it's what's that show? I can't remember. It's on HGTV, but everybody's so pretty and so cute, and all the houses look perfect. But like, whose life really looks like that? You know, and we're moving into a time where people may be jobless. It may be difficult to get work. So like, people don't want to look at that. So I think we're going to see an influx, and then authentic, real life becoming what people want to see. So with your clients, it might be like, stop hiding that truth, because people are right there with you. So it's important for us to like really bring out our humanity. But then I also feel like, with all of these shifts, and I've kind of felt like this for a couple of years, with all of these shifts with social media, Meta is always, it's like one day we love it, one day we don't. With the TikTok situation, there's going to be an increase in people moving off of those platforms to their own space, whether they're building their own apps, or they're going back to newsletters or YouTube, long form content, things like that. But I feel like owned media is really going to be king, because we possess that. It's ours. We can do whatever we want with it. We don't have to wait on somebody else to publish it. So if we do have a story, using your own space is going to be key.
Good.
Awesome. Thank you. Outstanding. And of course, Jen, we will round things out with you answering the same questions. What emerging trends will reshape PR in 25?
I definitely think what Sheba said is completely correct. I think with TikTok being on the fence now, people are now understanding the importance of owning your stuff, right? Having ownership of what you create. We first saw that when when Facebook would go have its own glitches, and it would go in and out, and people would, the whole world was shut down because Facebook was messing up, right? And now TikTok here, people are on the fence. They didn't know what to do, because am I going to lose my platform? And now TikTok is on the fence of being gone, and people are now understanding the importance of owning your stuff, right, and creating your own platform, so nothing is taken away from you, right? I think that is definitely going to be a new emerging trend. I think storytelling is coming back 100%. We saw that with Risa Tisa on TikTok. She created a whole narrative, a whole saga, right? That is now being even created into a movie or a series. Like, it's crazy the power of social media. But storytelling is coming back 100%, and that's definitely going to shape. That's definitely going to shape PR, the PR trends within onboard, right? And that's a good thing. And then to piggyback off what Ms. Reed said as well, that with this new presidency, yeah, it's going to be a major shift, right? A definite major shift. And I don't know if we're prepared for that. I don't know if we're excited for that. I don't know, right? But these new changes, these new changes are definitely going to create new trends and change how public relations and the internet is seen for sure for a lasting a lasting time. So that's my response.
Thank you very much. That rounds out the questions there. I have run the gamut of the panelists through the gamut of questions now. I think it's only fair for us to open up the floor and see if there are additional questions from the audience.
I think we did them all.
We did get them all. Okay. All right.
We answered them well.
See, perfect. Listen, I certainly don't take it for granted that I've had the opportunity to serve as your moderator today for such an amazing topic today. And I hope at some point down the road, people will be able to even archive this and see it down the road. Such amazing answers from each of our panelists. I want to thank you all for joining us. Thank you so much for your time. My time is up. But I would like to give the opportunity if there are social media handles from each of our panelists that you'd like to share, if you care to interact with them in the days ahead beyond today's podcast.
I'll start.
Go ahead.
I'll start. And I think one of the things that I'm taking away from this is it's about owning your stuff. And so instead of me telling you all my social media handle, I'll tell you to go to my website, which is shaleah.com, SHELEAH.com. And there you can just find out more about me. You can email me directly, connect with me. And if you're really excited, you can purchase the book. It's called Do You? Living a Bold and Authentic Life.
I love it. Thank you, Ms. Holden.
You can follow me on Instagram at The Fashionable Publicist. Spell it all out, The Fashionable Publicist, or you can go to my website, She Bridges PR, and connect with me there as well. And Sheba, I want to know more about the farmers market when you have a chance.
Awesome. And
is it my turn?
Segue. Yeah, perfect segue to you, Ms. Roy.
Okay, so on Instagram, you can see my handle in the little caption there. It's at Muse Brand MGMT. Funny story, I thought I was being really unique and creative, of course. And then there was like 5 things with the same spelling of Muse. Anyway, MUZE Brand MGMT. And then I'm www.mscreativeaf.com. And Bridget, I will share more information with you about the farmers market. But follow me, though, on social media, because that's my working portfolio. We have so many people who are like, oh, can you tell me what you do? Can you talk to me about this? No, come watch. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
And Jen, thank you.
Yes, you can go to my website, Jeniro Agency, JENIRO agency.com. Just check me out, see the work that we've produced, the amazing work we have produced with our clients. And that's basically it.
Thank you very much. And again, my name is Jasher Cox. You can just simply connect with me via LinkedIn. Again, thank you for your time. Our time is up, and we sincerely thank you for yours. Have a great day.
Thank you.
All right.